On this episode of Building Men, contribution. Welcome to the Building Men podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Meralda. Building Men is geared toward helping you become the most extraordinary version of yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Contribution is part 6 of 6 episodes entitled The Foundations of Masculinity. They were purpose, relationships, accountability, resiliency, and now finally we're going to be talking about contribution. When I think about contribution, the first thing that comes to mind is something that's larger than yourself, giving back or doing something that's larger than yourself. And it's kind of doing it for others, for society, or even for the world, I guess. So I'm going to change up the focus a little bit here. Maybe I shouldn't say the focus. Maybe we should just say the presentation of Building Men. And I'm doing this just based on some of the feedback that I've received over the past couple weeks. So I asked for people to just send me an email or let me know if they had any suggestions, comments, questions. And it's been great. Just the things that people have been bringing to my attention, things that really have resonated with them, and things that that I've been saying, or maybe some quotes that I've been using that have really struck a chord with people and made them think. And so I wanted to just put that out there as we're talking about contribution. And I wanted to just say one of the things that has come to my attention is just people have asked that maybe I be a little bit more vulnerable, maybe a little bit more, share a little bit more information about myself and my journey. And I agree. I think that that's been part of it. I think when I started the podcast, it was kind of more robotic in nature. It was a little more scripted in nature, and it wasn't, not that it wasn't authentic. It was kind of, I was doing a lot of writing beforehand and then trying to jot down notes and maybe reading off a screen, and maybe it came off a little bit too scripted. So I definitely don't want that. I definitely want it to be more conversational in nature, and I want to improve. That's, more than anything else, I want to improve and get better and continue to help people if I can. So as a backdrop, contribution as a backdrop, I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Is hopefully you can start hearing a little bit of a difference, or you start to hear a little bit of a difference in the way the podcast sounds moving forward. I just want people to understand me a little bit more, maybe connect with me a little bit more throughout the process. So a little bit about contribution. So think about contribution. It doesn't necessarily, we're not talking about giving financial, giving money, giving, anything financial. I wanted to think about contribution as it could be giving anything of yourself. It could be the work that you can do, the work that you do. It could be ideas that you have. It could be something that you create, something that you do, something. It could be anything. But one thing it's not, contribution is not for you. It's not motivated by a selfish interest. Contribution should be motivated by you wanting to do something for the greater good, for someone else, to help someone on their journey along the way. Tony Robbins said, "It's not what we get, but who we become and what we contribute that gives meaning to our life." And that quote right there, I think, says it all. It's not about what we get, but who we become and what we contribute that gives true meaning to our life. So I wanted to talk about where Building Men came from. I would think that this, as I think about contribution and where contribution fits into my life, this is part of, I would say, hopefully my contribution is this message that I'm sending out on the podcast right now. So where did Building Men come from? I got asked that question a few times. And so here's a story about Building Men. When I started as an assistant principal, it was back in 2005. And I was really overwhelmed with my job. It was really crazy just, going into that position for the first time, coming from being a teacher to going to being an administrator. And I was really overwhelmed. and just trying to manage, the day to day. I had a newborn son at home at the time, I remember, and trying to just manage getting through each day. I kind of felt like I was always, trying to keep my head above water. And there was a night that our guidance counselor, she was just this tremendous guidance counselor at the junior high school. Her and I did a night where we talked to parents of adolescents, middle school kids. Talk to the parents about how do you talk to your kids about sex? What do you do? How do you go about breaching the subject with them and, communicating that information? And I'll never forget, it was pretty well received, the parents that came out to this night that we had. And there was a parent who stood up and said, look around the room. What we're dealing with is all the parents that are here are parents of female students. Who's talking to the boys? Who's talking to them about anything that's going on? And there was this discussion about boys feeling entitled at the time as far as sexually with the girls, things that they, wanted to be able to do with the girls and things like that. And so Mrs. Van, the guidance counselor at the time, had a group called Girls Speak Out, where she talked to the girls about equity, and she talked to the girls about social issues and body image and society and confidence. And it was just a really well-received program, and it was an unbelievable program for the girls in the school, and there was nothing that was similar for the boys. And so at the time I was like, thanks lady for calling me out on this, but upon reflection I thought, what, let me give this a shot. So I decided to start a boys group, and it became something larger than what I had initially anticipated. We had a lot of the boys in the school joined up immediately. A lot of it was, I think they wanted to have their forum to bitch about the girls in the school, but a lot of them joined up. And what we did was we started every meeting. We set it up in a circle, and there was no corners, no place to hide, no rows. There was no dominant position. Everyone kind of had equal footing in this area that we set up. And we started every meeting with a handshake, a firm handshake, looked each other in the eye. We greeted everyone. And then there was a topic for discussion for each of our meetings. And they ranged from respect to responsibility to perseverance to relationships to, it could be things, pressures at home and family issues and career and their journey. And I did this program for many years. I mean, it was more than a decade I ran a Building Men program. And to me, it was really the most important work I had ever done. And I had been an administrator in public schools for a long period of time, 13, 14 years. And this really was the most important work. It was the thing that really drove me, and I was really passionate about it. But I think I was so passionate about it because I felt like I was contributing. I felt like I was maybe meeting a need that some of these students, maybe they didn't have a father figure at home, maybe they didn't have a great relationship with a father figure, maybe even the messages that they were hearing at home weren't positive messages. And so maybe I was filling a void or a need in some of their lives that might have helped them along their way. And so when I think about contribution, to me, that was the program that I started, Building Men, was a way that I was able to give back, even if it was some small way. I was able to kind of give back and help someone become better than what they would have otherwise been. And it's funny now, a lot of the boys that were in that initial group are now in their late 20s, even into their early 30s, and they still remember a lot of the things that we did. And it's funny, I taught the 7th grade boys how to tie a tie. That was one of the things that I taught them how to do. And they still remember that, that first experience, being able to tie a tie. But the idea of contribution was that they took some of these lessons and now they're using it in their own lives and perhaps even with their own sons. And I guess I just have this feeling of I didn't do this program for me. It wasn't done for any other reason than to help people, to help young men. And starting this podcast was a scary thing for me. It definitely stepped out of my comfort zone a little bit, but the idea behind it was, maybe these ideas that we talked about, I could continue to contribute even in some small way. So maybe there are people out there that are listening to the podcast and they heard the things that we discussed in the Foundations of Masculinity that maybe resonated with them, or maybe they pass it along to someone who maybe pass it along to someone else, and just maybe this message can get out to a few more people. And to me, that it brings joy to me knowing that maybe some of the things that I've been able to discuss on the podcast have had a reach to help someone else along the way. During the course of this podcast, I usually leave people with something, a couple bullet points or something to think about, or a task or a challenge. And I would just say this to kind of close everything with the foundations of masculinity. I would say with contribution, it is one of the most important things you can do in your life, is to make someone else's life a little bit better, to do something for society that will make it a little bit better, not for any other motivation than because it's probably the right thing to do. When I also think about this, I think a challenge for you moving forward might be just take a look at yourself in the mirror and think about ways that you contribute to another person, to your community, to the world. Maybe you're a coach, maybe you're a writer, maybe you produce music, whatever it is, whatever way you contribute, even if it's in some small way, embrace that. Embrace whatever you're doing to contribute. And if you can't find anything or you can't think of anything, then challenge yourself to find a way to contribute, find a way to help someone else's journey, help someone else along their path, maybe to become something better than they thought they could be. Think about, you have something to offer. Everyone has something to offer. It might seem insignificant to you, but there's always going to be someone out there that needs the information that you have. Just think about that. There's always someone out there that could use the knowledge that you have, even if it's, this is how you change a tire. Like, let me show you this skill that I have, and maybe it can help you along the way. There's a poem called The Bridge Builder. So the last night I was standing on a bridge. It was really peaceful outside. It was like a perfect night, and moon is out. It was a full moon, and I just thought about this idea of a bridge, and the idea of building a bridge from one side of a land mass to another over a difficult terrain or a difficult area. And so there's a poem called The Bridge Builder, and it's written by a gentleman named Will Allen Dromgoole. Here it goes. An old man going a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you're wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at the evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I've come, he said. There followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him. If you like any of the material on the podcast, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit, maybe even writing a review or rating it in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You could consider following me on Instagram at building.men, and then let me know what you thought about this whole journey through the foundations of masculinity. Email me at buildingmencoach@gmail.com. Good to talk to you guys today, and I will see you next time on Building Men.